With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. Naveed Akram, accused of killing 15 people at a Hanukkah festival on Sydney's Bondi Beach, appeared in court via video link from Goulburn Correctional Center after being released from hospital care. The 24-year-old faces charges including murder and committing a terrorist act, but has not entered pleas. The hearing addressed extending a gag order protecting victims' identities. Akram was wounded and his father killed in a police gun battle following the December 14th attack, allegedly inspired by Islamic State. The case is subject to multiple inquiries, including a royal commission examining anti-Semitism and the attack's circumstances. U.S. military operations in the Caribbean, including the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife in January, have cost nearly $3 billion, according to Bloomberg. Maduro and Celia Flores face U.S. federal charges, which they deny. The U.S. has maintained naval forces off Venezuela, enforcing a partial blockade, while President Trump said America would oversee a transition of power. Operational costs reportedly peaked above $20 million daily. Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves, and Washington has brokered oil deals with interim authorities. The operation has drawn international criticism, including from Russia. China will remove import tariffs on nearly all goods from 53 African countries starting May 1st, President Xi Jinping announced at an African Union summit in Addis Ababa. The zero-tariff policy expands a previous duty-free regime that covered only least developed nations. Eswatini is excluded due to its ties with Taiwan.
This is the most exciting announcement that Africa could receive at this particular time when we're at the AU. You will be aware that the United States of America removed AGOA, which was something which was a cornerstone of Africa's export to the United States of America. But this is more than a replacement of AGOA.
Britain's Director of Public Prosecution said members of the royal family are not above the law as police investigate former Prince Andrew over alleged misconduct involving Jeffrey Epstein. Thames Valley Police are consulting prosecutors' claims Andrew shared confidential information with Epstein during his tenure as trade envoy from 2001 to 2011. Disclosed emails suggest he may have leaked sensitive financial and diplomatic details and advanced Epstein's business interests. Separate correspondence links associates to meetings in China. Andrew has lost his titles and residence as scrutiny intensifies, while police assess further allegations related to Epstein. The UK and Germany's top military chiefs have urged the public to support increased defense spending to deter potential Russian aggression, saying rearmament is necessary to preserve peace. Writing in The Guardian and Die Welt, they warned Russia's military posture have shifted westward since invading Ukraine in 2022. NATO members agreed in 2025 to raise defense spending targets to 5% of GDP by 2035, reflecting what officials call a new security reality. The appeal follows U.S. calls, including from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, for Europe to take greater responsibility for its defense. Russia denies plans to attack Europe. Nigel Farage celebrated as Keir Starmer abandoned plans to cancel elections.
It's amazing, isn't it? I've never promised once in the run-up to May the 1st last year that we'd cut council tax. How could we? We were inheriting heavy debts absolutely everywhere. Have we made £300 million of savings? Yes. Have we got plans to become more efficient and save more in the years to come? Absolutely. And if you look at the council tax rises in areas that are run by reform, they are lower than for the other parties in other areas. And look, you can't just come in to a broken local government system, wave a magic wand and change things overnight, but I believe we're off to a good start.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
Right now, somewhere in Nigeria, there's a Christian family being persecuted. Those who are not killed are often forced to flee their homes. At Equipping the Persecuted, they're committed to reaching every affected area and help heal the deep physical and emotional wounds that have been inflicted upon them. But they can't help them without your support. So please visit equippingthepersecuted.org and donate today. Sign up for just $35 a month. It's a little over $1 a day, and you'll help rescue Christians who are suffering and provide security, medical care, food, shelter, and love. The situation is urgent, so I'm asking you to join in the next 10 minutes. It's a life of fear and danger for these Christians, but for just over $1 a day, you can change everything. Go online to equippingthepersecuted.org and make a difference in the life of a persecuted Christian. That's www.equippingthepersecuted.org.
Hi, my name's Michelle Tankey and I'm the volunteer manager at the Lost Dogs Home. We've got 145 incredible volunteers that help us with a wide range of activities, including helping out in the laundry, taking dogs for a walk, doing activities with our enrichment program, administration, gardening, you name it, they're helping us around the shelter. Whether it's blowing bubbles to entertain kittens waiting for adoptions or even taking a dog for a walk, it's such an incredible positive impact on the animals. Volunteers are so important and special to this shelter because they support us in caring for thousands of animals each year. The impact they have enables us to do far more for the animals than we would be able to. For example, we can get on top of the huge amount of laundry we have. So the volunteers allow us to clean thousands more blankets than we could. It's incredible the amount of gifts that we're given by the public. We're so grateful for it. So if we get some toys, we can give them directly to puppies straight away to play with. Or towels, we can take them to our vet hospital for them to use immediately. So it's a really important job to help staff with. I would say to someone who's interested in volunteering to please get in touch. We would love to hear from you. We have an application form on our website that you can fill in, so please just detail all your skills and experience you can offer the shelter, and we'll be in touch when a suitable role comes up.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
Welcome to a Tuesday. It's 6:08 in the morning in the UK. Good morning. Rise and shine. No. Get up. Don't go back to bed. You will see sunshine. You will see some sunshine. Maybe not today, tomorrow, maybe not the next month or 2 or 3, but you will do it. And in Queensland, which we're broadcasting from, the epicentre of, especially the Gold Coast, lubrilips and those inflated bottoms, and beaches too, can't forget the beaches. It's 8 after 4, and for New South Wales, Sydney and Melbourne, it's 8 after 5. So let's get into our show as I get a tickly throat. So this will be interesting. Can you believe it? I might just go to a quick...
Our mission at Pets of the Homeless is really simple, and that's to keep vulnerable people and their pets together when they're going through a tough time. Back in 2015, Pets of the Homeless started with a 20-kilo bag of dog food, made it into small packs, put it in a suitcase, and it was just me walking down the streets of Melbourne. One woman on a mission to make a difference. I would share the story on social media.
We've just hit 100,000 meals distributed today.
And the community really responded positively, and it just grew from there.
My name is Kent, and this is Hippo. She's everything to me. She's such a good girl. I got her at a time when I wasn't very stable. I'd come out of prison, I was homeless, but as soon as I got her, I just realised, oh my God, I can't let this dog go. And she's just my best friend. Hippo had a canine equivalent of an ACL injury. I knew there was something really desperately wrong. It was agonising seeing her suffering. My caseworker put me in touch with Pets of the Homeless, and Yvonne said that they could help, and I was just so overjoyed. I wouldn't have been able to get.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
Send those ambos back. Lordy Lord, it just went out of control then. I apologise for that. See what happens when you put in 98-hour days. Now, the Munich Security Conference, that's not the one we want. We want this one here. Isn't it interesting how everything is going wrong? But anyway, Joachim Hagopian is a West Point graduate, former Army officer, and author of Don't Let the Bastards Get You Down. Now, after the military, Joachim earned a master's degree in clinical psychology and worked as a licensed therapist. He is an independent journalist focusing on geopolitics and US empire, and an author who's exposed today's global pedophilia scourge in a series of books entitled Pedophilia, and Empire, Satan, Sodomy and the Deep State, which are current Amazon bestsellers. Now, we're going to talk to Joachim today about the prevalence of pedophilia in the higher echelons of power, whether the tide might be turning against those who have avoided the law in favour of victims. First of all, Joachim, you don't have to send an ambo for me, although isn't it incredible? You ever get that that thing in your throat and you realise it's a bunch of frogs in the throat? It's terrible, isn't it?
Wrong time for it, yeah.
And right at the start, though, can you believe it? It says, bang! Anyway, look, pedophilia and, by the way, nice to see you. Thank you very much. Pedophilia and child abuse are really sore topics in the US and the UK, but they're sort of embedded into the elitism, aren't they?
Sure is. Pretty much in all main Western countries, especially Britain, 2 out of the 5 pedophilia and empire books were centered on Britain alone. That's 40% of all my research and work output on this topic is this little island nation called Great Britain. But it ain't so great when it comes to dirty men doing things to children. And yeah, I cover ground with the United States scandals. And right now with the Epstein thing, it's the big topic because we're finding out that a lot of these people that have been in positions of power, and some still are pedophiles and likely involved in Satanism. It's a big topic right now. And through Epstein exposure, we're still waiting on all the details on all those people that he serviced by bringing all the children to all these very wealthy, powerful people. Nobody beyond him and his partner in crime, Delane, have been prosecuted and punished. All the powerful people that were ever involved with Epstein, or for that matter, you can go back to the Elm Guest House scandal in Britain during the 70s and 80s. The pretty much the Westminster government has been so steeped in pedophilia. And so, yeah, I devoted 2 out of the 5 books to that.
Tell me this, why is it that Epstein has highlighted the pedophilia, which is embedded in the echelons of society, especially the elite? It's not brand new. It's been going on since Adam was a boy. But why now? What has sort of? I don't know if turning the tide is the correct term for it, but it has created the awareness. Why now?
Because the powerful pedophiles have gotten away with it. And the scandals have come and gone, since the 70s, really, with children used as the bait and the blackmail currency. It's been going on heavily since the 1970s all the way to now. But of these powerful people that have been involved in this, nobody goes to jail. Nobody at the government level of the parliament or Congress level has gone to jail for a pedophilia crime. Nobody. You might see somebody in the state and local levels, that has happened, but at that higher level, across countries, Britain, America, none have gone to jail. So that's why the Epstein files are so important, because the people have not forgotten that there is a whole echelon of power. And really, I mean, to do those things to children, you got to be totally sick in the head. Yet, these are our leaders, and they've all been unprosecuted. So that's why it's not going away, and it's bigger than ever, even with this idiot Epstein, supposedly dead, since 2019.
Look, it's interesting too, the super injunctions in the UK. Why would the court allow it?
They're always the courts, the law enforcement, and the courts together have been controlled by the string pullers, the people above them, the people that are in the governments, at the top levels. They are the ones that always squelch these scandals. Come out and you hear something about it for a few weeks, and then they come in and they do all these kind of things like ban it from the press, where you can't even talk about it, and much less name any names. And that's been the really the pattern all throughout all these different scandals. It's always gone that route, where it's then covered up and suppressed. And, that's why it was left to someone like me who, I work with basically victims of pedophilia and abused children in the system in America. In fact, in the largest child protection county in America, the Los Angeles County, I worked with them as a licensed therapist for several decades. So, it really hits me hard to know that this has gone on forever and never been properly prosecuted, because the system is set up to only make life misery for any brave survivor of sexual abuse to want to report it and get justice within the injustice system. It's always an uphill struggle. They're re-victimized constantly. I mean, the Epstein victims, they haven't had justice because none of their abusers have ever been brought to court. So yeah, that's the big problem that we're facing. And the good thing here is, with all the publicity going around now with the Epstein files, uh, finally, maybe we are turning the tide, so to speak, where behind the public demanding it, and that's what's really important here. The public must demand justice for all the thousands, millions of child victims, not just, the victims that these powerful, sick people do, but all victims. It's very common, some teacher or coach, or, like on the local level like that, but then it's on the big level of the powerful people too. And pretty much the powerful people, they can do that to the children and get away with it because they always have. We got to stop that.
I mean, pedophilia. I mean, my dad prosecuted went after the Catholic Church and government in Australia and police force, the whole lot. And it's amazing how the higher they become. In fact, the one he went after, and he had a book out. He was Australia's leading paedophile. He was number one bad boy. And they finally got him, but the church moved him around and stuff. And I would imagine that any institution that has history of whatever behind it, such as the UK. Tell us about the UK Labour parliamentarian that a few people dare talk about. I mean, my mind is just racing away at the moment.
Peter Mandelson, they call him the Prince of Darkness because he had the reputation for, as an MP, starting as an MP. He would be in London and he would go to the subway stations, and there's the rent boys, and it's a very notorious history in London for the rent boys. That's a kind of a derogatory term because they are the victims, but it's a derogatory term that is even like a crime to even say that kind of thing. But yeah, victims that are boys, they can be 12, they can be 15, they can be 17, like that age, down to 9, I guess, and they have been selected by groups of very powerful men, among them Peter Mandelson. He was actually caught in a Operation Or. That was a police operation for investigating child pornography on the internet of people, on the computers of people, and they found that through Operation Or, his name came up, and wouldn't you know it, he was at that time a minister for Tony Blair, another criminal who went by the name of Miranda and cross-dressed. He's another sicko, and I don't doubt, probably a pedophile. He certainly runs with them and protects them. And I wrote a whole chapter on him and how he's protected the pedophiles. And one of the pedophiles that he rewarded with minister positions, multiple minister, 35 different minister positions in the time of Mandelson's career. He's probably been a minister more times than any other British parliamentarian government quote servant. That's how long he's been around. And then he does these. He's been affiliated with the National Society for the Protection of Children, NSPCC, in Britain. They link these pedophiles with these organizations to protect pedophiles, but they are the gatekeepers. That's the bottom line. They always select gatekeepers to be in charge of, taking care of the abuse problem. Well, if you get the gatekeepers, it's not going to happen, and it hasn't. That's why Britain is so notorious for its pedophilia scandals. But it's as hard as the media tries to shut up, because they're, along with the court system and the law enforcement system, they protect those in power. Well, the sea change is now the people are now aware, finally through the Epstein files, of the immensity of this problem worldwide. They're finally becoming aware. When I first started writing these books back in 2017, it hardly could come up. And then if it did, people would not want to talk about it because it's too brain shocking for most people to even consider what these powerful people do to innocent children.
Yeah, and one of the most powerful, recently anyway, is former Prince Andrew. Terrible, terrible, absolutely needs to rot in hell. Tell us about Carl Beech.
Carl Beech, right after Jimmy Savile, who in history was the biggest pedophile in British history, hundreds of victims, and he was with the BBC. He was a big disc jockey and very famous celebrity. He was the best friend of King Charles III. We had his brother, Andrew, the best friend of Jeffrey Epstein. There's no accident here that these royal figures at the top of England line up with the history's worst pedophiles in America and Britain. So anyway, right after the death of Jimmy Savile, who lived his whole life without spending one day in jail, but after he died, it all started coming out. A lot of his victims started reporting the crimes of Jimmy Savile. And then there were these whole police operations, Operation Fernbridge, Operation Midland. And what came out of Operation Midland is zero arrests. But people like Carl Beech went to the police and started reporting his experience as a child from the age of 7 to about 16. We're talking 9 years that he's been shuffled around, trafficked around, London and mansions, and they, do the parties and do the dirty. And he was a victim. One of the early ones that started reporting it, I think that was back in around 2015, 20 that he began reporting. 2013, 2014. That was the mass exodus of once Savile was gone, and the police were like, because of the whole onslaught of the information about Savile, they were under a lot of pressure by the British people for answers, and they did this whole public inquiry. It lasted 6 years, and it also was just an act to placate the masses that are demanding justice, and it never happened. So anyway, all these police operations, he emerged from Operation Midland, the police operation, and the police commissioner actually believed him because, there's a whole bunch of them coming out of the woodwork reporting the same things, at these parties. And not only would they do these pedophilic acts with these victims, they were actually murdering people, children, at those parties as well. Blood sacrifice, it kind of goes with the turf of these sickos at the top. And so he reported this along with hundreds of others at the time. They used his information, and then they actually went public with him in 2015. He started, having that name of Carl Beech. He went by Nick in the beginning, as anonymous. Anyway, the commissioner of the London Metro believed him, and the whole thing began with the Operation Midland to try and investigate the Parliament members and all the rest that were involved in the pedophilia around London and Westminster, and so that unveiled. And here's the thing, and I wrote this in a recent article, that at the same time that was going around, Cliff Richard, this very famous singer of England, he was also a rent boy. At one time, he was, as a child, abused, and he became an abuser. Now, he actually was involved in he went by the guest name of Kitty. And there's all this evidence that, yes, Cliff Richard, the singer, very famous guy, has more hits over more decades than any other human, certainly in Britain. I think 6 decades straight, he had a number one hit, Cliff Richard. Anyway, he's got a legacy of pedophilia that he went to court in 2018. He went to court, and he got the court and that's why I linked these two things together. Carl Beech was a victim, and then they turned basically him into a victim again by saying, "Oh, he made it all up," and then he goes to jail. They even claimed that he was a pedophile and had child porn on his computer. So they made him the victim, and then with Cliff Richard, and that was in 2019 when he ended up in jail. And he's been in jail until just, 2 weeks ago, a week ago, or whatever. Anyway, at the same time that was going on, Cliff Richard basically had a reputation as a pedophile, and he needed to stop it. So they did a operation, a police operation. They raided his home at the same time that they invited the BBC with cameras there, and it was all set up because that was illegal for a police operation to actually be in communicado with the media and then show it live on TV. He was in Barbados or one of his islands where he lives, and saw it on TV, his own home being raided at the time in live, real time. Anyway, a big thing went down with him. He was under investigation for 2 years, and then the basically the prosecution service of England decided, okay, we don't have the evidence, when there was loads of evidence. But they say, okay, the investigation's closed. And then he countersued and made, £5 million worth back in his suit that ended in 2018. And that basically shut the door to anybody that has a name that might be famous, well known, that you can't go after them. So it sealed the door shut for any more prosecutions of very high profile pedophiles. And at the same time, they shut the door for the victims to get justice with the Carl Beech case. So, and this is 2018 and 2019. So it's odd that Mandelson's now finally under a lot of heat and maybe investigated by police. I hope to God he is. He probably won't go to jail for pedophilia, though, because there was some financial stuff between him and Epstein. But anyway, it's ironic that the timing with Mandelson under a lot of heat right now, a long time pedophile, and then the victim re-victimized in jail for the last 8 years or whatever, 7-8 years, out of an 18-year sentence he was on, and all of a sudden they release him. They don't give any reason why he gets this early exit. He's only done about a third of the time that he was sentenced. But anyway, it's all very strange. So I put these two things together between Cliff Richard, Mandelson, the pedophile, famous, powerful, protected, and Carl Beech, the victim that was re-victimized, to make sure that no more victims come forth. And that's what these police operations all are about. Oh, they placate the pressure by the public because they want justice, and then they don't arrest any well-known or powerful person that's a pedophile. That's the history over and over again.
We could talk a long time on this. I mean, I mentioned my dad took 40 years for some sort of justice. Anyway, if somebody wants to get hold of your books, and I suggest they do, because they are very factual and written very well, and there's plenty of it there, how do they do that?
Well, because this is such an important topic that everybody needs to know about for the protection of your own children, if nothing else, I made sure that it's available online for free. It's on Amazon as well, but at pedoempire.org. That's where you can find every single chapter of all 5 books. You can also find all my articles at thegovernmentrag.com.
Fascinating, but terrifying at the same time, and very disturbing. Joachim Hagopian, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy your day in downtown Bali. There's no such thing as downtown Bali, but anyway, it sounds good. Thank you very much for your time. This is The World Today.
When you come with mercy ships, you get spoiled for the ordinary. You get an amazing opportunity to serve alongside incredible people from all different nations, all different backgrounds, and you get to serve amazing people in the countries that we serve in, and your life will be changed. You will never go back to what you were before. I think it's an incredible experience.
In sub-Saharan Africa, 93% of the population can't access safe, timely, and affordable surgical care. For many, hope and healing seems out of reach. Mercy Ship is here to change that narrative. Our volunteer crew delivers life-changing surgical care and education straight to those who need it most. on board our fleet of hospital ships. And it's all made possible by people just like you.
Mercy Ships has changed me in the way of seeing how God redeems pain and suffering and turns it to joy in the lives of our patients and in our own lives. I came to volunteer and to give of myself, but really somehow I'm walking away with more than I could have ever hoped to receive.
The beating heart of each hospital ship is its own vibrant and unique volunteer community, made up of individuals bringing their own diverse skills, languages, and cultures, all in pursuit of one life-saving mission.
Mercy Ship is not just about the work, it is also about the love and caring that people have for one another. The moment you board the ship, you become an instrument in God's heart.
While surgeons and medical crew bring hope and healing in the operating rooms and wards, the need for volunteers goes far beyond the hospital. Mariners, engineers, cooks, plumbers, teachers, administrative professionals, and so much more. No matter your skill set, if you want to use your time and talent to change lives while experiencing life-changing transformation for yourself, then you're exactly the kind of person we're looking for on board.
It's a unique opportunity to use your skills, talents, and gift to help others in need. It's a chance to make a real difference in the world.
When you come in here and instead of numbers, you see real people and you see their faces and hear their stories, everything changes. In here, you grow as a person and as a professional. After Mercy Ships, you can just go back home and keep being the same person you were. In here, you find purpose.
Our purpose is a mission 2,000 years in the making, to love and serve one another as Jesus Christ did. Mercy Ships is committed to partnering with Africa to make a lasting difference, and it takes a community of passionate and daring people like you to make it happen. Come experience it all for yourself and find your place on board today, as together we show how hope is on the horizon.
We're today's News Talk, the world today.
And welcome back. We're going to talk, it's death and destruction today, but we need to talk about it. And that was a very disturbing conversation. I mean, Joachim was superb, but when it gets down to the pedophilia that's running rife throughout the elite in the UK and the US, it's very scary. And then the way they bury it, and I can tell you they do bury it from personal experience. My dad, when he prosecuted the Catholic Church, Victorian government and the Victorian police force, all in one go. Why do it by halves? Alexei Navalny was a Russian opposition leader. He died in February 2024 in an Arctic prison, a month before President Putin was re-elected in a landslide vote. On the 27th of April 2024, the Wall Street Journal wrote that the CIA, the Director of National Intelligence, and the US Department's Intelligence Unit determined that Russian authorities were not involved in the death of Navalny whilst he was imprisoned. Now, last week, Europe accused Russia, because they had a gold tooth maybe, of murdering Navalny, supported by such great countries, UK, France, Germany, Sweden, and the Netherlands. He did it. Russia has hit back at these allegations, calling the accusations, and they are, in my opinion, we'll find out more what Eric thinks, they call this Western propaganda and a Western propaganda hoax. Eric Krauss is a Russia expert and a French national who has spent his entire career in finance in Moscow beginning in 1997 as head of fixed income for Dresdner Bank, and following the 1998 crisis as managing director of Uralsib Bank, and then Sovlink Bank, where he authored the best-known Russian strategy publication, Truth and Beauty and Russian Finance. We're going to talk to Eric about Navalny, who he met once before. Eric, thanks for joining me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure.
Tell me, what was Navalny like, Alexei Navalny like?
I met him very briefly on two occasions in public places. I knew some of his people very well. Vladimir Ashikov, several of his collaborators. And she, and in fact, Masha Gaidara at one time had attempted to recruit me to participate early on in his political career. And I said, you probably haven't read my papers. You don't really understand which side I'm on here. So thank you very much, but I will abstain. That said, I took the opportunity to meet with him a couple of times, and then I heard him speak first in Moscow, then out in the huskings in Siberia. And it was two different men. Moscow, Navalny was pro-Western, pro-liberal. He was squeaky clean, shiny, believed that Russia should embrace American values. When you heard him out in Siberia, it was Russia de Russian, Russia for the ethnic Russians. And you can send all those brown people back home. Now, Russia is a multi-ethnic state. Russia is made up of about 150 ethnicities. And the one way for the great neocon dream to come true, for Russia to blow apart, would be to foment ethnic hatred, ethnic tension in Russia. This would be a disaster, which is why Mr. Putin goes so far out of his way to, he prays at the Orthodox Church, but then he goes and today is going to be joining the Muslims for their ceremonies and the Buddhists, and he is very careful to be sure that all Russians know that they can find themselves in their government. And so for this reason, Navalny, who I have publicly characterized as a Russian Mussolini, because Mr. Navalny, in my opinion, had one great desire, one great principle in life, and that was Navalny himself. He could be a socialist, he could be a communist, he could be a right-winger, he could be a liberal. Whatever his audience wanted, that's what he was. And he came to a sticky end. There's certainly no evidence to suggest that the Russian government had anything to do with this.
Why would we know that they don't like Putin or Russia at all, because they're guilty of every crime in the world. But however, why would these countries, including the UK, why would they come out with this garbage? I mean, even without a body.
Well, 2 years after the fact, my background is in pharmacology and toxicology. I know a little bit about it. You don't take 2 years to run a tox analysis. One would assume that if they're claiming to have data, then they had to run something on body fluids or tissues. You cannot do it at 6,000 kilometers distance. Now, did they dig up the body? They haven't told us. If they had samples, then why did it take them 2 years to come up with this new and unknown, previously unknown toxin, except among the frogs? Perhaps it came from France. But why did it take them so long? And why now, just in the middle of a major PR campaign against Russia? They need something new every day to keep the presses rolling. What is fabulous is that no one asks the obvious question, cui bono? Who benefited? As we all know, and you can find this on ChatGPT,
we have lost Eric for one moment. He's back again. Eric, you dropped out.
Sorry.
No, continue on.
The Russian government was negotiating a prisoner swap to trade Navalny against some Russians held in German and American prisons. Now, alive, Mr. Navalny was a reasonably valuable card. Dead, he was useless. his popularity in Russia was running to about 5 or 6%. It had been much greater in Moscow and St. Petersburg before the war, before Ukraine. But obviously, the Ukraine war caused a major shift in the Russian public opinion, and the young generation, the Moscow, St. Petersburg, English-speaking generation, had shifted. They had finally understood that the West was not a friend to Russia. And Navalny represented that Western, the Facebook generation, I used to call it. So he was no threat. He was in prison. He could have been held incommunicado if they wanted to. Why should they bother to kill him? And why then? And why has it taken 2 years for us to hear that, oh, after all, they did it, although the CIA said otherwise?
The UK media, which has lost all credibility, in my opinion, years ago, but they're still at it. First of all, with Epstein, the Russians did it. The only thing the Russians did was that Bill Gates contracted a disease from a Russian lady of the night. So yeah, possibly they did that, but who can tell with Bill Gates? But having said that, the Russians are guilty of just about everything. Why? Surely the UK media, they actually know the truth. Why are they this voice for the government or for the anti-Russia, the anti-peace talks between Russia and Ukraine? Why are they doing that? Is this just a directive from the government?
Mike, I am old enough to remember the days when The Economist, the Financial Times, actually attempted to put some diversity of opinion. The Economist set up straw men to knock them down, but at least they set up the straw men. Now, this would be considered treasonous to give any attention to the alternative view. It has become, frankly, Orwellian. There is a very, very long tradition of hatred against Russia in the UK. It goes back to the 19th century. This dark Eastern menace, which was going to sweep over Europe, ergo the Crimean War. Then they were our friends when it was convenient. And then once again, there's this demonization. And this is tragic because of the missed opportunity. In 1991, there was a possibility of long-term peace, the end of the Cold War. Russia and the West were going to become friends. We could stop wasting so much money on the military. There would be no threat of nuclear annihilation. And for 10 years or so, it was delightful until the Americans and their British lapdogs decided that this wasn't good enough, that quote, we had won the Cold War, and therefore Russia had to be pushed back into a corner. Russia did not consider that it had lost the Cold War. It considered that the Soviet Union had voted itself out of existence and that Russia expected to be welcomed with open arms by the Western community as an equal. And these people don't have equals. They have adversaries or serfs. But the notion that the old Slavic menace could be an equal was just not acceptable to them.
Are you surprised, and I think you've come to realise or understand how deep it is, the censorship that permeates from either large companies or from various countries, and the West seems to be at this stage seems to be leading the way. Are you surprised at because I mean, for example, in it, UK journalists have been investigated for suspected terrorism offences. Now, there are many organisations that are shadowy and heavily funded by foreign dark money, such as the Centre for Countering Digital Hate. Now, that was set up by Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff. Then we have, even on the socials, we have It's almost like if you don't fit in with the narrative of the script, you're going to be sidetracked very quickly. Like when we know we are. We can be absolutely. We might have, just say, for example, if we had, I'd say, 10,000 watching us, they would say that we have one, and they do that for a reason, because you think, oh, nobody's watching it. So the censorship that basically comes from government, or as I said, those large companies, but mainly government. How bad is this for the world to move forward?
Mike, we were talking about frog poison. So since we're on the subject of frogs, I would like to cite the boiling frog. What is happening now, the degree of censorship, the degree of throwing people in prison for unsanctioned media posts, for silencing any, if you read the FT or the Economist, there is not one paper now going in the opposite direction, going against the editorial line. There used to be. I used to get occasionally op-eds published in the FT when I was in Moscow, and it would be inconceivable now. So gradually, people have given up on their freedom. They have accepted a truly Orwellian picture, and this is very dangerous, because if people are sufficiently misinformed, then and their government, Karl Kraus, my great ancestor, said, "How do wars start? Wars start when journalists lie, when politicians lie to journalists. Then they believe what they read in the press." So there's a feedback loop here, and they end up believing what they are told, and therefore you make really bad policy decisions. And I find it terrifying that we are moving towards a situation analogous to 1912, 1914, to the First World War, where the jingoism and the bellicose rhetoric, and we have to spend more money on weapons, and we have to fight this terrible threat from a country which, on the one hand, is described as a gas station with, out in the tundra, and the other hand, an existential threat to Europe, which is about to sweep across the European plain to the Channel. But nobody asks the obvious question: does this make any sense? Who does this serve? Whose interests, whose financial, whose economic interests are served by this? It's not you. It's not your children. It's not the next generation. It is a very small coterie of people who have some very, who benefit very nicely from this sort of tension.
To try and expose this, I mean, again, it's very hard, because the legacy media always follow a particular, as you know yourself, they follow a particular narrative. They do push government narrative, and they get paid for it, whether it's from a community service announcement or a government announcement and so forth. So they can justify that part and don't bite the hand that feeds you. Having said that, we find also that independent media is also controlled by many of those that control legacy media, but they don't tell anybody. And so they get to the nudging bit to push it back to what the way the government is pushing their narrative, or a particular brand, or whatever. So it's almost like an information operation, but it's not. How dangerous, when you mentioned that wars have been started by politicians lying, it really hasn't changed a whole lot, has it? The messenger you can't trust. The person that has the message, the politician, you can't trust. How would you nut your way through it to find what the real story is, or is that going to become almost impossible?
It's not impossible. It's difficult, but you can't be too lazy. When I arrived in Russia in '97, I met an older Russian woman on the plane, and she was full of interesting information and views on a country which was very new to me. And she said, "Eric, the The only difference between we Russians and you Westerners is we don't believe our own propaganda. You do. Uh, the Russians were fairly skeptical for the simple reason that they had been lied to in the Soviet Union, and the lie was acknowledged. It came out into the open. It became part of the official discourse. So yes, people became skeptical. In the West, the lies have never been acknowledged. Perhaps in the United States after Vietnam, but even then they found a way to put some lipstick on the pig. So you've got, I mean, I argue with Westerners who say, oh, well, we know all about Ukraine. I say, have you ever read an original source? Do you speak Russian or Ukrainian? Okay, this stuff is available in translation. There are alternative media. The alternative media, as you say very rightly, have their own agenda too. However, what you have to do is get the Western viewpoint, get the Russian viewpoint, perhaps the Chinese viewpoint, and then triangulate and try to figure out for yourself what makes sense. What is an obvious story you are being sold? And how do you, whose interests are being served, and is what they're telling you make any sense? Did it make sense for Mr. Putin to kill Navalny when he was going to swap him? Was there any reason to get the massive bad PR when he was politically a spent force? Why did Russia invade Ukraine? Did Putin wake up one morning and say, oh, I feel evil today, I'm looking for someone to... No, there is an 8-10 year history of NATO expansion, but this has been washed out. This has been Typexed out, if anyone remembers Typex. And this is very dangerous.
It is dangerous, isn't it? And just from your observations, do you think it's getting worse?
Yes. And this is going to go against the editorial line here, but I am, as I said, my background is in medicine and I'm fully vaccinated. I believe that climate change is a very real threat. And to me, the Epstein files are a red herring. And I'm probably going to get lynched for saying that. But okay, there's diversity of opinion. What I find disturbing is that if you tell me what someone thinks of Bitcoin, I'll tell you what they think of vaccines and climate change. Now these are entirely different questions, and there is no correlation really between them unless you're very paranoid. But there has been a segregation of opinion into two camps, and you have to belong to one camp. I catch hell from both camps because I have my own views and I express them. I may be wrong a lot of the time, but I don't, I try to seek what my version of truth. And this does not seem to be a very popular stance these days.
No, I think as the world moves on, I think we've become, you're right, separate camps. I think we've become very intolerant to other ideas. I was always taught that you tell it as it is, and that's it. I mean, it's there is the fact and the truth, and it's not, I haven't got my own truth, and you haven't got your own truth. It's the fact. The fact is, those numbers say that give that particular answer. So I think we have I think the world needs to be able to sit down and to talk. Whether we're able to do that, though, because of the inherent bias that everybody has, and we're all looking for that person.
The economic interests. I mean, the Financial Times is owned by Nikkei. You notice that as relations between Russia and between China and Japan deteriorate, Japan becomes reflexively more anti-Russian. The FT does not miss a beat. Every single day now, there's another horror story about Russia. I think they have files, and each day because people get bored of the old one, they come up with a new one. They have to keep the audience focused, and there are economic and political interests which are driving this, and they're driving us towards a cliff edge. And I really don't know how to change it. I speak in the media when I get the chance, And I hope people are skeptical enough because, you know, if I listen to RT, I'm also pretty skeptical. I mean, some of their stories don't really work. But okay, they at least they're honest about who they are speaking for. They are Kremlin controlled, Kremlin owned, and they don't make any secret of it. So you listen to them, and then you sort of sort through what is credible and what isn't. The Western media claim to be fair and free and independent, and please.
Yeah, I totally agree. We have run out of time, but invitation is there whenever you fill up for a bit of a chat on the air.
I'm always happy.
I think that you're very illuminating, and I enjoy it. Very, very concise at the same time. Eric, if somebody wants to find out more about you, besides all those Marvel,
My FBI file.
good on you. But are you on socials at all?
I'm occasionally on Facebook. I'm pulled away from the social media because I waste too much time. It's like chewing gum for the mind. And I'm no longer issuing my strategy notes, though perhaps if somebody might tempt me into doing so. But you'd probably find me on Facebook and, you know, on the internet like everybody else.
Fantastic. Eric Kraus, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. This is the World Today. Coming up next, we'll have the protagonists and still talking about the subject we're talking about now.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has ordered a Cabinet Office investigation into Labour Together, a think tank linked to his rise, amid allegations that hired PR firm APCO Worldwide to smear journalists by falsely linking them to Russian or Chinese sources. The controversy follows reports of undeclared donations and claims APCO gathered background information on reporters. Starmer said he was unaware of the operation. Technology Secretary Liz Kendall confirmed investigations are underway, including scrutiny of former director Josh Simons. Critics accuse the group of contempt for press freedom and involvement in broader censorship campaigns targeting political opponents and conservative media outlets. Opposition leader Angus Taylor has criticized the Albanese government's net zero policy, arguing it's increasing energy costs and driving inflation for households and businesses.
You've heard me talk already about key priorities. Immigration. We've got to make sure that we get the standards up and the numbers have been too high. But we've also got to make sure that Australians who want to come to our country, or foreigners indeed, who want to come to our country, who don't believe in our way of life, who want to bring the hatred and violence from another place to our shores, that the door is shut. And that must be a top priority.
I'll get on to that.
For the Liberal Party and the Coalition.
More than two-thirds of Spaniards oppose Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's planned mass amnesty for illegal migrants, according to a Sociometrica survey, with 67.4% against the measure. The government intends to grant residency by royal decree to migrants without criminal records who have lived in Spain at least 5 months, potentially affecting up to 850,000 people. Opposition is strongest among younger voters. Critics warn the policy could act as a pull factor for migration. The People's Party and Vox have seized on the issue, while the European Commission has reportedly raised concerns about its impact on broader EU migration efforts. Spain has seen a 365% surge in mental health-related sick leave among young people over 7 years, according to ABC, with cases rising from 217,481 in 2020 to 446,116 in 2025. Temporary disability claims have increased 132% over a decade, surpassing 9.2 million cases and costing Social Security 33.3 billion euros. Anxiety, stress, and mood disorders have grown sharply since the COVID-19 pandemic. Mondays record the highest number of sick leave requests. The government is considering reforms such as phased returns to work, while employers cite bureaucracy, healthcare shortages, and rising absenteeism as major challenges. Larry the Cat marked 15 years as Britain's chief mouser at 10 Downing Street, having served under 6 prime ministers since being adopted in 2011. The gray and white tabby, adopted from Battersea Dogs and Cats Home by David Cameron, roams freely and often appears in photographs of visiting world leaders. Though his rodent-catching record is mixed, he remains a popular and nonpartisan symbol of stability during turbulent political times. Now aged 18 or 19, Larry continues to patrol Downing Street, occasionally clashing with other official pets, and is widely regarded as a fixture of British political life. Nigel Farage celebrated as Keir Starmer abandoned plans to cancel elections.
The boss of the Electoral Commission said what they'd done was illegal. Clearly, the government's own lawyers believed they'd acted illegally, and so they caved in, and 4.6 million people, or should I say 4.6 million council taxpayers, because that to me is the key point, will now get the vote. So yes, it's a legal victory, it's a victory for our party, but above all, it's a victory for freedom and democracy.
We'll be back with another news break at the top of the next hour. This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
It's early evening in Lochgelly, and as many as 100 young people gathered in the park. Some of the local residents see the young people as a problem, and while many people simply avoid the park on Friday evening, the Salvation Army has been taking a different approach.
Some young people are out on the street because they don't feel safe at home, or they may have parents that are working all the time and they're home alone a lot.
Hello, how are you? Good.
We see so many young people in crisis. We see so many young people turn into alcohol and drugs, and it's because there's not enough support.
We come and shower today for something to do with our friends.
They like to have a laugh, they like to joke around.
Are you okay? Be careful.
And the conversations that we have surrounding school and family, alcohol, drug use, can then go on to, okay, so how can we support you?
Throughout the UK and Ireland, the Salvation Army has been recruiting and training detached youth workers. But youth workers and the resources they need are scarce. Local authority funding has been drastically cut in recent decades, and spending on young people's services is only a quarter of what it was at its peak. All this shows the importance of the Salvation Army's work.
She won't tell anyone because she'll forget in like 2 seconds.
Our aims are to build relationships, to get to know young people, to be a constant in their lives, to be a safe adult, because not all young people have a safe adult.
It's not what we're here for, it's actually...
So if we can be that constant in their lives, during the ups, during the downs of their lives, that's a major thing.
I start every run with a plan and a promise to stay safe. A big part of my plan is to be alert to drivers and other pedestrians. Whether you're on your feet or behind the wheel, the road belongs to all of us. Every trip, every time, safety first. Alert today, alive tomorrow.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And welcome back to the Protagonists on The World Today. Nice to have your company too. The Munich Security Conference was an excellent event for a renewed accusation of murder. The Russians did it. Bill Gates can attest to that. They did do it. News broke of Navalny's death at the very same event in 2024. In that year, Yulia, let's get this name right, Yulia Navalny, Alexei Navalny's wife, was coincidentally at the Munich Security Conference, which gave her a worldwide stage for accusations. The Russians did it. This year, UK Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper announced that only Russia had the opportunity, motive, and means to poison Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. Speaking at the conference, Cooper said that toxicology analysis found a lethal substance in Navalny's body, a toxin not naturally present in Russia. She said the UK and European allies were determined to expose what they called a Kremlin plot to silence opposition voices. Now, according to Cooper, they were determined for the truth to be told and echoing Navalny's message. She said they should spread the truth because the truth was the most dangerous weapon of all. They should practice what they preach. She should tell this to her esteemed leader, maybe. Let's discuss with our panel about what they think this is all about and the lethal evidence the Europeans have been able to find without a body. First of all, our panel is Dr. Greg Simons, geopolitical commentator, Oliver Boyd-Barrett, Emeritus Professor at Bowling Green State University, and Tim Norman, journalist and a very good journalist too. And we've just lost Oliver there, which is going very well indeed. So what we might do is go to this one and look, magic, just like that. Before we get into that, I want to play you this clip, if you don't mind, if I can find it. It's here somewhere. What we might do is start chatting about it, and then I'll put the clip in. That would help also. Greg, what's your views on this? On the Russians did it. I mean, truly, the EU didn't have a body.
No, but the EU SSR doesn't need to work on evidence because, I mean, you listen to Kaya Kallas, who's constantly telling us of her increased intelligence through reading, and yet the evidence is to the contrary. I mean, it's a clown show, and that's putting it mildly. I mean, these are the same people who don't know anything about the Nord Stream pipeline and then blamed it on some random Ukrainians in a pleasure yacht. And these are the same people who absolutely deny any kind of genocide in Gaza. So these they got plenty of evidence of, but yet they should keep to writing some scripts for the latest James Bond movies or something. It's just not plausible or credible.
Yes, but we need to know about the teeth because you got to have the gold teeth. Tim, what do you think?
It's a truly bizarre story. I mean, I'm fortunate to be on the panel with some very expert media analysts who know about media power better than I do, and I just really wonder what they think this narrative is directed. Who they think this narrative is directed at. This whole story is. I don't think it's. Well, I mean, as I say, I'm interested to know what people think. It seems to me almost like a sort of punishment by absurdity, if you like. The story is, I'm sure people are familiar with the phrase jumping the shark, which it goes back, I think, to the episode of Happy Days, the 70s sitcom Happy Days, where the Fonz is on water skis and he jumps over a shark that's in a lagoon. And it's taken now to be, you know, an idiom referring to just when a narrative sort of abandons all reason or rationality. You know, that's exactly where we are, in my opinion.
And wondering whether they have gold teeth, because that seems the Russians did it. I mean, Bill Gates, the Russians did it, but that's another story, which we don't want to go there. I just want to play this clip, and we'll come back to our panel in 1 second.
Well, the Russian regime clearly wanted to silence Alexei Navalny, and that's why we've now got this evidence of the lethal toxin that was found in his body at the time of his death. And only the Russian regime had both the motives, the means, and also the opportunity to use this lethal poison against him. That is why, as a group of European allies, we have now reported this to the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. For us, this is a clear breach of the chemical weapons rules, and that's why we want accountability for this.
We've obviously seen similar poisoning incidents on British soil, Livchenko, Skripal.
Are you worried that incidents like these could happen again?
I do think we have seen a growing hybrid threat from Russia, their aggression, their willingness to use lethal toxins that we saw in Salisbury on our own soil, and we've seen too in the case of Alexei Navalny. We've also seen, of course, their aggression towards Ukraine. And we need to ensure that we are ready to work with our European partners and our NATO allies to respond to all forms of Russian aggression as we see it.
But it can happen on British soil. People will be worried. What can you say to reassure them?
So it's one of the reasons we have increased our surveillance, our response to the kinds of hybrid threats now that we see, the cyber threats, sabotage threats that we have seen, not just in the UK, but in other parts of Europe as well, are really a sign that the Cold War peace dividend that we had all believed in and hoped was the case from Russia, that is just now gone. And that's why we have to take this very seriously as part of the UK's protection of the national security of our citizens.
I'll be kind. Greg, how pathetic was that? I'm not going to be kind. I mean, truly, surely they could do better than that. And I'll get on to Tim in a second, because that's one of his.
Well, you know that I'm politically correct and absolutely proper about all things. So let me introduce you to a new word. She is a living incarnation of what you call a cockwomble. And this is a cockwomble. And this is a person, it says usually male, so there's obviously some gender rebalancing, to use their terminology, going on, prone to making outrageously stupid statements or inappropriate behaviour while generally having a very high opinion of their own wisdom. I think that pretty much sums her and the circus that you have in the banana monarchy that is the UK government at the moment.
Tim, you're on the firing line here. She's one of yours. She speaks a bit like you. You're better looking, of course. There's an interesting term to describe her. Is that a good word?
Well, I mean, Greg is free to describe Yvette Cooper in that way. I mean, I don't know really what is causing these people to sort of repeat these narratives. It's almost as if there's somebody, in the sort of corridors of Whitehall or somewhere in the shady sort of background that's sort of saying to themselves, let's just produce the most implausible and absurd narrative we possibly can, and then laugh while our politicians obediently repeat this before the world media, and the press, of course, obediently follow suit. And nobody sort of, like the Emperor's New Clothes, nobody points out that this story just is beyond absurd. It's too ridiculous to countenance. And so they all just go through this sort of process, this sort of machine of propaganda. And nobody sort of sticks their finger up and says, hang on a minute, this just doesn't sound like a plausible story in any way, shape or form. And yet that's where we are. I mean, obviously we laugh about it and it is quite ridiculous, but as in that clip as you played, she said we increased surveillance. That's what that was her kind of calming, if you like, words to her interviewer, was that they were increasing surveillance. And clearly behind this narrative there is a machine that is, number one, increasing surveillance on domestic population, Western population more broadly, but number two, of course, driving this country and most of Western Europe towards war with Russia. So as much as it's an absurd story, and I'm still sort of mystified as to why anybody thought the idea of a poison frog toxin, should be pushed out. It has been done. It's interesting actually that not every nation has actually run with this story. We've only got 5 countries, right? So it's Germany, France, is it Sweden and Holland and the UK? Those are the 5 that have kind of produced this narrative. But it's not as if every country in the world believes this nonsense. And I suppose we've got some sort of hope in that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, Greg, I think you watch some thrillers. You probably like the British ones because they are very good, best in the biz. Okay, you're a script writer, and you're going to determine that someone died from a frog, part of a frog. Okay, so they say to you, but when you write this script, and it's not for Monty Python or the Two Ronnies or whatever, when you do this script now for something completely different, you haven't got a body, but you're going to find in that script that this person died because of his association with the liquid of a frog. You know, as Eric Krauss said before, Eric Krauss suggested maybe it was the French with their frogs. Said hopping off the plate over to downtown Siberia, and he perished. Maybe that was the case. Okay, back to you, the script writer. You're going to come out with some credible information that Navalny kicked the bucket because of this frog stuff in him, and but they haven't got a body. Could you tell me how your script would go, and would you be employed thereafter?
No, I would definitely not be employed afterwards. I think they would be advised in a very direct manner that to treat your audience like mushrooms is not a good idea. Trying to keep people in the dark and feeding them BS isn't going to work, especially with something as implausible as this. I mean, I told this to my students talking on a course of sustainable communication about this frog poison, and all of them had this big smirk on their face because even for undergrad students, this just seems absolutely ridiculous.
Yep, I mean, it's quite a problem. Now, what about you, Tim? You're an investigative journalist. You would probably come across some doozies in your time. Using your best powers of investigative powers, Sherlock will call you. Can you tell me how they would determine this without the body?
Well, the chain of custody is just one of many problems with the whole story, isn't it? And this is such a convoluted story, the Navalny story. Obviously, this is, if you like, the second time he's been poisoned by Putin, allegedly. And the first time, of course, he was on a plane, and he was on a Russian plane flying across Russia, piloted by Russians. And apparently he was affected by Novichok while he was in the toilet of this plane. And there's actually footage in this documentary about him, the Navalny documentary, which I'll talk about a bit later if you like. But anyway, you can hear him, this footage, he's sort of screaming in the toilet of this plane. So the Russian plane makes an emergency landing in Russia. He's taken to a Russian hospital where apparently his life is saved by Russian doctors. And you have to ask yourself, well, did somebody along the line not get the memo about how this guy was supposed to be killed by the deadliest poison known to man? Novichok apparently far more deadly even than VX, which apparently, up until then was the most deadly nerve agent in existence, or so we're told. So that's just the beginning of this implausible narrative, and that's implausible enough, isn't it, really? But then, of course, Putin, the evil poisoner, allows Navalny to be flown, having recovered, or at least to have his life saved, flown to Germany. And it's only 2 days later he arrives in Germany. And then the Germans say, well, we've discovered that he's been poisoned by Novichok. So once again, you're asking yourself, well, why did this Putin, the poisoner, allow his victim to be flown to Germany to be, to have this poison discovered in his bloodstream? It's truly bizarre. The whole narrative is just literally incredible. It defeats credulity to the point that I start to think, well, that is actually the point. As I was saying earlier, it's almost like somebody's having a laugh. One of my friends more or less suggested it was sort of like a help call from somewhere in the dark corridors of Whitehall that I was talking about. Somebody out there is saying, listen, the British government's gone mad. They'll believe anything. I'll just put some like a message in a bottle, throw this story about a poison frog out there, and hopefully people realise that the whole the whole operation has gone completely off the rails and they've gone completely mad.
Yeah, and by the way, welcome back again, Oliver. Looking nice and clear, and going to hear you loud and clear. We're just talking about the, and Greg was going to be a script writer and a whodunit script writer, and that we determined that if he'd followed this script at the moment, nobody, the frog did it, he wouldn't have a job thereafter. Sitting in North America, you must be appalled at the level of or the lack of intelligence from the British government and also their media.
Yeah, lack of intelligence from the intelligence community is not only restricted to Britain. It's a feature of European intelligence. It's also a feature of US intelligence, as we saw with the absolutely crazy WMD rubbish that they fed us in 2003 for the invasion of Iraq. So now we've got 3 of these instances. I expect Tim has just been talking about this very brilliantly. We had plutonium-210 back in 2006 for Litvinenko. Then we have Novichok for the Skripals in 2018, and now we've got epipatidine, I think it is something like that. Frog serum for Navalny in 2026. So I think it is total rubbish. It's totally unbelievable. Is not credible. Intelligence, even if it was true, intelligence services are doing the wrong thing in running with it because it is just so implausible. But why are they doing it? At least, why are they making this attempt again to deceive us with this kind of fairy tale stuff? And I think this is what really I think we probably do need to focus on more than the fairy tale itself. I think your previous guest had his finger on it really when he was talking about how in the media business you need to keep fresh, so if one of the main things that's keeping you in business, if one of the main reasons why the government is allowing you to continue to earn the profits that you make is because you do what government tells you to do, then that's fine. But you kind of need something fresh every day. You've been told that we've got to be anti-Russian. We've got to make the Russians look either cunning, or when they're not cunning, they need to look stupid, or when they're not looking stupid, then they need to look dreadfully fearsome. So you need something every day, and so this is today's fairy tale about Russia, and let's just be aware that of all the countries in the world, the one country that is least credible about Russia is, of course, the United Kingdom, because the United Kingdom has been running a 200-year anti-Russian campaign. Different reasons for it each time, but there is this constancy of anti-Russianism. Now, there are 2 very serious things that we need to be aware of here as to the reason why this is going on in 2026. First of all, of Britain in particular, also the United States. The United States may pretend to be distancing itself from all of this, but it's still there. The main purpose of main foreign policy objective of the United States is global hegemony, global domination. It may appear to have distanced itself from Russia and Ukraine at the moment, but that's just for the moment, because the United States has to worry about its declining stocks. It has to worry about Venezuela and Cuba, and particularly it has to worry about so that it can start worrying again about Taiwan and China. So why we need to worry is this is all the pathway to World War III. That's why we need to worry. One of the main reasons why the West is motivated to risk and indeed almost to provoke World War III is because this will provide, it foolishly believes, it insanely and crazily and stupidly believes that by indulging in these kind of in this kind of policy, they will be able to dismember Russia, which is the largest territorial unit on the planet, and is fabulously rich in terms of its mineral wealth and in many other ways. And of course, it has very good sources of rare earths and things of that kind. The overall purpose, and the West has very kindly spelled this out for us, as well as you don't even need to be an investigative journalist to find this out. It's all kind of written out in very plain English in the 2018 report on extending Russia. So this is the objective. And in the meantime, of course, just one more story about some exotic poison. None of these poisons, by the way, actually are exotic. I was looking up just a moment ago before the broadcast. There's an Illinois-based pharmaceutical company, I believe it's called Abbott's, that makes this stuff. It synthesized this stuff. And this is a company that operates in about 160 countries of the world. There's nothing exotic about once again, like with Novichok, we were first of all told that Novichok, it could only have been done by only the Russians could possibly have made, and that of course was a total lie. And the stuff was of course being produced in England and several other countries, and here again, and it was the same with polonium. Polonium back in the Litvinenko case, that was supposed to be ever so rare and expensive. But no, that turned out to be actually very cheap and very available. And much is the case with this one. With this one too. So I think the story is rubbish, but the reason for the story is extremely worrying and extremely dangerous.
Greg, let's extrapolate. Follow on from Oliver there. The reasons for this and what's happening in the story. You're no longer a scriptwriter for Disney. You're back to reality. The frog didn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, just to add on what Tim was saying before about Navalny, his Novichok poisoning, which whoever gets poisoned by this totally lethal thing survives. But when he was sent to Germany, this was during the height of the scamdemic. Airspace was closed. Everything was shut down, yet Putin, who could have said legitimately, I will not fly him there because everything is closed, allowed him there. The Germans never, ever released the toxicology report, which they theoretically did to find he was poisoned. So you got a lot of these problems. They don't add up. And I mean, as Oliver was saying before, I mean, if you're to get fear going, it should at least be plausible. And this is not plausible. Fear is something that can happen to you in general, such as terrorism or something like this, but it can happen to you personally. And this idea of frog poison, I mean, the British have really, really gone downhill, shall we say, from deception operations as Operation Mincemeat, where they deceived the Germans, to what you have currently, which deceives no one. But as Oliver pointed out, I mean, that horrible fishwife who said she's increasing surveillance. That is the problem, because surveillance against whom, with what means? And I mean, the UK is already a banana monarchy, and it's slipping further down the rails. I mean, under Chairman Starmer, I mean, there is no freedom of speech or expression. I mean, this is just another step on what little is left, what you can say or not say, and where absurdities are freely spoken, but the truth cannot be freely spoken. And this is the problem. Not because people don't know the truth, but they're not allowed to say it. Otherwise, they'll be classified as Putinists, terrorist sympathizers, any number of things to shut down these absurdities. And of course, we can see that from this stupid woman. She really doesn't. I mean, she's giving Kaya Kallas a run for her money, I'm pretty sure, and that is really scraping the barrel.
Tim, I mean, you probably watch Slow Horses with Jackson Lamb. What would he say to this? And why do you think they're doing this?
My wife loves that show. I sort of watch it from the corner of my eye. Yes, I mean, indeed, the British still produce decent drama, television drama, but the reality, sadly, is, quite pathetic, really. I mean, Greg was talking about the sort of, Chairman Starmer. Another worrying thing that's under threat in the UK and elsewhere, but particularly in the UK, is trial by jury. And what we see, of course, in this Navalny case, as we saw in the Skripal case and Litvinenko, is the presumption of guilt. The very opposite of presumption of innocence, which, of course, is a foundational principle of justice. So, we're supposed to believe that Skripal was poisoned because that's the kind of thing that Putin does, and Navalny was poisoned because this sort of backward chain of presumption of guilt, which is quite the opposite of what we should be doing. I can't say, Mike, you're a poisoner because you did it before. If I did that in court and before a jury, that would be thrown out immediately by the judge. You can't have sort of any previous, if you like, history of alleged guilt if you're trying to establish a truth in a court process. So we've got the opposite of that as in the trial by media that we've seen again and again on this sort of poisoning narrative, and this is the latest iteration of it. And as Professor Boyd Barrett says, and as we know, and the reason why we're talking about it is, although it's totally absurd on its face, it's part of a terrifying propaganda machine, which almost to your amazement is rolling towards war. And as Greg says, the entire population of this country and indeed the world might be looking at this story and laughing, and yet the so-called elites, the media, and Yvette Cooper, she does actually have an academic background, and it's curious to me how these people, as I said at the beginning, have been railroaded into presenting this nonsense with a straight face, and nobody. As I said before, nobody has said to the emperor, "Excuse me, sire, you're not wearing any clothes."
I think one of the concerning issues here is that the media. I mean, because still the general populace of the UK, and even though there's a small amount that go to independent media, they still throw on, as you saw there, ITV. They still throw on BBC, all the other channels who are pouring out the same dribble. No one's saying, and I haven't seen any headlines or anything, even from the independent media. No one's saying is, why aren't they asking the real questions? Why aren't they doing more of a deep dive instead of becoming just a narrative for the government? What do you think, Oliver?
Yeah, it's building one lie on top of the other. I mean, another and media are deeply implicated in propagandizing or propagating the myth of Bill Browder and Hermitage Capital. And if we want to investigate the ire of the West towards Russia, Navalny and his connections, I don't say they were particularly intimate, but Navalny did support Bill Browder's Magnitsky Act, which, of course, has been a very important pretext for U.S. sanctions for humanitarian reasons, supposedly, but of course, always these things can be stretched to cover anything that you want them to be stretched. So I think there's an urban Hermitage capital management connection here, and this goes back to the role of Bill Browder and Hermitage Capital in Russia in the 1990s, when Hermitage was the largest foreign investor during these terrible years of transition of the 1990s, when the death rate accelerated enormously across Russia. There was immense poverty and desperation amongst so many people who were thrown out onto the streets. But here was people, Hermitage and people like Hermitage, busily seeking profit for U.S. interests from the privatization of what had previously been Soviet state assets. So this is part of the background to the connection between Browder and Navalny. Browder supports Navalny because, I mean, all along Navalny, I know his politics to some extent evolved, but I think all along we can see in Navalny the typical script for a neocon regime change agent. I'm sorry to say, I can't prove this, but I'm saying that he followed the script. And Browder recognized that and supported Navalny, and Navalny supported Browder.
I see, Greg, that the wife, Yulia Navalny, I think it is.
Navalny.
Yeah, Navalny. Sorry about that. But I see that she's a great wife. But she said the assassination is now a scientifically proven fact. It's not, is it? And it's. But what do you think she's been bought off? I mean, I'm just, do you think they had some marital? I'm not too sure about that.
Well, if we look back at the time when Navalny died, I mean, she shacked up with another guy pretty quickly. I mean, the body wasn't even cold, and she was gone. So, I mean, she seems to be a very, if we put it diplomatically, transactional woman. So she obviously doesn't have any sense of integrity or ethics. And she's, spouting the narrative to keep the paymaster paying.
What do you think, Tim?
That's certainly what John Helmer, the great journalist we've mentioned before with the reference to the Skripal case and many other things, he has more or less said what Greg just said. I mean, there's a gentleman mixed up in this called Christo Grosev, and he is part of an investigations operation or a so-called open sort of source journalism collective called Bellingcat. And Bellingcat was this foundational of this narrative against Skripal and against Navalny. They're the source of this story, really, and they provide the so-called journalism behind it. And so there's this film about Navalny called Navalny. It won an Oscar, it won a BAFTA, and Christo Grosev is interviewed in it about Novichok. And clearly, Navalny was still alive at this point. And he looks at the camera at one point and he says, well, the insidious thing about Novichok is that it disappears every trace of it disappears from the body within hours, so that all of the victims appear to have died a natural death. And so it's like a kind of the perfect assassination weapon. But that obviously raises tremendous problems with the story, as if the story wasn't problematic already enough, which is how then was Novichok found in Navalny's blood by the Germans, or indeed, in the case of the Skripals, how did Portendown find traces of Novichok in the Skripal's blood if it disappears from your body within hours and you appear to have died a natural death? So he's just allowed to sort of run away with his mouth in this documentary, which then makes it into the final cut. It's just another illustration, really, of how incoherent and full of contradictions these sort of propaganda narratives have become. They're just truly unbelievable. But once again, we have to come back to this point: they're being used to drive us towards war. And I mean, Professor Boyd Barrett and my other colleagues are experts in media power, and I find myself thinking that we have, as it were, the West have lost the war in Ukraine in a physical sense, in a kinetic sense, but we still have soft power in the form of the English language, which is still obviously what we're using here today to communicate. And that's really what we're left with, just a sort of brutal and rather stupid manipulation of the language, because frankly, that's all we've got left in terms of power.
Greg, I don't know if you know, tell us about the organisation for the prohibition of chemical weapons, because they'd have all the details.
Yeah, they're the ones who got quite compromised in Syria when they silenced their own guys on the ground who contradicted the political narrative which was being pushed by the UK and the US. So, I mean, it's like the IAEA and this Grossi. I mean, these international organizations which have a high level of US and UK influence and interference are absolutely compromised and no longer fit to serve the purpose which they were intended.
What do you think, Oliver?
I very much agree with Greg on that. The whole structure of international globalist relations has been so compromised from, particularly from what we know of the IAEA and the Organization for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And so who's worried that the Britain is forwarding its findings, or these European countries are forwarding their findings to the OPCW? Are we supposed to assume that they will then be subjected to the most extraordinary, rigorous analysis of the highest level? No, of course not. We'll never hear about it again. The same happened with Novichok as well. I mean, we, as Russia always has to point out, with respect in the case of Litvinenko, and then with the Skripals, and now with Navalny, no one ever bothers, of course, to send the samples to Russia. No one is prepared to say how these samples were gotten in the first place, and I mean, think about it for a moment. If they were able to access the samples, they were therefore presumably able to get access to the body. I'm not quite sure where Navalny is buried, but I'm pretty sure that if a group of white-coated the scientists turn up at a graveyard somewhere in the Arctic Circle and start sort of digging around Navalny's grave, there's going to be some kind of intervention. So if the West actually did have access to the body in time to take these samples, that tells me they also had access to Navalny to kill him. And why do I say that? Because it's so much more to the advantage of the West to kill Navalny, although I don't think he is. I think he actually did die of natural causes, actually. But it's so much more to the advantage of the West to kill Navalny than it is to Russia. The death occurs only about a month before the 2024 presidential elections. The last thing that Putin, who gets a landslide win anyway, the last thing that he wants is some story about how, wicked, tyrannical, authoritarian Putin. There he is. He goes around murdering all these incredibly powerful and challenging politicians. Not at all. I mean, Navalny never got. He never got a popularity rating of higher than 20%. Most of the time, it was a lot lower than that. And in 2024, his party, I believe, got something like 1.4%. So Navalny's death is to Western propaganda advantage. It's not any kind of advantage to Russia.
Tim, it's sort of like it's almost like a big grade, not movie, but big grade information operation, trying to get the good folk of the UK behind the government, because there's going to be a war. There's going to be a war with Russia. You know that. Sure, they have this having an attempt at peace talks, with Zelensky and Putin, or Russia and Ukraine. I suppose NATO is there too, just to put their 2 bobs worth in. But if you keep coming out with bad Russians, I mean, even with Epstein, the Russians did it, and then you have now this, the Russians did it. Can I just ask your honest opinion, and understanding that the people that we mix with are sometimes a little more up to speed with what's happening, but the general consensus in the UK, are they falling for the constant "the Russians did it" story?
It obviously depends who you speak to. I think I mentioned before, there's the Daily Mail website, which I don't advocate to anybody listening or watching, but it has this unique feature of allowing people to comment without registering. So you can effectively express your opinion anonymously on the Daily Mail website, which obviously has these stories in a very sensational mode. And you don't, for example, on the BBC, if you comment on the BBC website, you have to register with the BBC, and you're a kind of self-selecting group of headbangers, I might suggest. But in the Daily Mail, which would be stylized as the more sort of, shall we say, less intellectually gifted of the British people, in fact, that's where you find the scepticism. That's where you find people laughing at these indeed extremely laughable stories. I mean, just going back to the OPCW briefly, I mean, that is indeed an extremely worrying development. The sort of corruption of the OPCW happened over time. And, it was actually in 2018, shortly after the Skripal event, that this corruption became clearest, I think, with a sort of horrific event in Duma in Syria, where bodies were found in a basement. The Russians were blamed. Well, the Syrians were blamed, of course, through Assad being an ally of the Russians. But what emerged was the corruption of the OPCW. There were whistleblowers from the investigators on the ground. So that's when we really think, I think, rational observers saw that this very, very important watchdog had ceased to perform this critical function of policing the use of poisons, chemical weapons, and so on. I mean, that goes back to 2003. I think the original head of the OPCW was kicked out by John Bolton because, John Bolton was keen for the war in Iraq, and the OPCW was an impediment to that. So they got rid of the original head of the OPCW. So even back then, it was obvious these organisations were being manipulated and turned into political chess pieces, really, and not doing this very, very important function which we need of a policing of these poisons and these chemical weapons, which are such an emotive subject. You can flatten Gaza, drop the equivalent of nuclear bombs on people, devastate a whole enclave, if you like, but that doesn't evoke the same emotional reaction as this allegation of a chemical weapon used on British soil, or wherever it may be. Somehow that sort of produces the bigger headlines. It's very strange.
What do you think, Greg? Looking at and you're a professor based Department of Journalism, Media and Communication. Do you think the people who have, and I do think it's an information operation of some sort, do you think they need to go back to information operations school?
I think they need to go back to primary school, because these ones are damn dense. I mean, a pond of algae has greater collective intelligence than these people who are spouting this nonsense.
That's very good, and it just leaves me there. Have to come in, and what I do is I throw to Oliver. Oliver, if you had students with that level of intelligence of the algae, but it's a very poor, isn't it? It's a very poor information operation, but it's disturbing that many people are buying this.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And of course, we talked about when we talk about motive. So why are they making these attempts? even though they are incompetent in making them. So we talked about how it contributes to building up of war fever against Russia. So nothing really very new there. But I also would like to add this idea that we are, I think, very likely seeing the end game now play out in Ukraine, and that this is a war that it does seem to me will need to be finished on the battlefield, and a rump Ukraine accepting Russian terms, essentially. And the European leadership, I think, is beginning to realize that very soon it'll be very obvious. It'll become far more common knowledge than it is now that back in 2022, in March, April of 2022 in Istanbul, had Ukraine and Russia just been allowed to get on with it, Ukraine would not have made any.
We just lost you then, Oliver. If you wouldn't mind, what I might do is come back to. We've just lost Oliver. So what we'll do is we'll come back to Oliver. Your microphone dropped out, so something happened to your audio. If you could, there we are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. So just very quickly then, back in 2022, Ukraine and Russia would have come to a settlement which would have allowed the Donbass greater autonomy within Ukraine, apart from Crimea, which Russia had already agreed to fold into the Russian Federation. Apart from Crimea, Ukraine would not have had to make any further territorial concessions. But of course, Britain stepped in on behalf of Washington to stop that agreement from happening, promising Ukraine that no, you can't sign this. We'll be with you. We'll give you all the weapons you need until you've won this. We're behind you all of the way. And Zelensky, who may, as far as I know, but I can't prove it. It may be an MI6 agent or something of that kind. But Zelensky folded, and he agreed. And so, what is the result? The result we know is probably well over 1 million deaths, more Ukrainian, I believe. And I have examined all accounts of these figures fairly closely. Far more Ukrainian deaths than Russian. And this is a tragedy of unimaginable proportion in the Second World War era for Europe and for the world. And how are European politicians going to look when this becomes more self-evident with the final collapse of Ukraine and the final collapse of Western propaganda about how Ukraine is winning the war? They're going to look as stupid as they are. And if Europe allows these guys to continue in power, well, they deserve to be U.S. vassals.
Yeah, my wife was driving to work one day and was listening to our national broadcaster here, which is the Australian Broadcasting Communist Corporation or something like that. Anyway, and they were saying that Ukraine is it's great strides. Russia is losing more ground, being pushed back, blah blah, and it was just an absolute lie. I just need to ask you, Greg, as we wind up, because we have almost run out of time, where to from here?
Well, I introduced you to that nice little word, cockwomble, at the beginning of the program. I think they need to be purged out of the system because there's already too many of these ones populating it. So, I mean, some common sense needs to return, and you're not going to have that when you got these mentally and logically challenged cretins like what you've got in the EU SSR and what you've got in the UK. And I mean, not only are they morally corrupt, and they're also ethically corrupt. I mean, because these people, while they're talking about ethics, I mean, you've got the likes of Chairman Starmer, who has these Ukrainian men, young men, running around London, burning his cars and property. And I mean, one only has to imagine what he has done to offend these young Ukrainian males to get this, especially with what we see with these Epstein files coming out.
To wrap it up, also, Tim, what's your thoughts? Where to from now? I mean, because Greg's been very polite, saying nice things, challenged mentally, emotionally, all that sort of stuff. My opinion is that they are. I think they're running out of things to do, and almost a panic on one hand. What do you think?
Well, it is, once again, not to be a party pooper, but it's a dangerous situation. I think we have to agree. And as Professor Boyd Barrett says, peace will come, on the battlefield if it doesn't come through diplomacy and negotiation. And peace means a reckoning. And that's what these so-called elites, these political figures, are scared of. They're scared of a reckoning. They're scared of reality breaking in and people saying, well, what happened to all that money? There's no accounting for the course of the money that's gone to Ukraine and so on. It was supposed to be a very corrupt country. And, indeed, the elites are corrupt. The whole corruption is in danger of being exposed in times of peace. That's when the people start to say, well, how did this come about? What led to this terrible war and all these people being killed? And unfortunately, that's what they're scared of. And that's why we get this doubling down to the point of absolute absurdity, like poison frogs. So it is a very worrying situation. We have to kind of dislodge these people and get some kind of sense back on the table, as Greg says. But how it's done is still a problem because they're so invested in this destructive and increasingly stupid story.
Oliver, you have the final say.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. My final thought, I think, if I can bring it back to Navalny, is that this is a man, I think, who had immense potential as a politician. But instead of working within the Russian political system, which he could well have done, and I think would have done with great effect, actually, without encountering the kind of experiences that he did he did meet with the Russian style. Instead, he set himself up as a separate person, a separate entity, very, very far too friendly towards the West, far too friendly with people like Bill Browder, and really begging for attention as just yet another regime change operative. Well, what a pity, because Russia, I'm sure, could very well do with strong oppositional politicians. It will benefit from that. People who work within the system and who work for Russia, who don't want to make Russia into yet another whining European US sucking on the teats of the US. No, that's the kind of Russia that Navalny wanted. How sad. And we see the consequences. And the consequences are not Putin's fault.
Interesting, isn't it? What is it? Cockwomble. I like that. I'm going to use that more often. Greg, if somebody wants to find out more about what you do, which is a little bit scary, how do they do that?
Well, go to ResearchGate, for example, where you'll find under my name various materials there, but also along with Tim and Oliver, I have quite a few things on propaganda in focus. So this is another zone of political incorrectness, if we want to term it like this. So these are the main points.
Oliver, somebody wants to find out more about you. How do they do that?
Yeah, propaganda in focus, definitely. I have a Substack that I write very regularly on. It's Empire and Communication and NATO Wars.
And Tim, besides UK column, where can they find out more about you?
Well, just as my esteemed panel colleagues, I write on propaganda in focus, which is a sort of a great platform for a range of analysis. So yes, I recommend that to everybody.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. The word of the day, by the way, is cockwomble. Thank you to Greg. We will send you the royalties later, but I'm going to be using that. I love it. This has been The Protagonists. Coming up next, The World Today.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. Naveed Akram, accused of killing 15 people at a Hanukkah festival on Sydney's Bondi Beach, appeared in court via video link from Goulburn Correctional Centre after being released from hospital care. The 24-year-old faces charges including murder and committing a terrorist act, but has not entered pleas. The hearing addressed extending a gag order protecting victims' identities. Akram was wounded and his father killed in a police gun battle following the December 14th attack, allegedly inspired by Islamic State. The case is subject to multiple inquiries, including a royal commission examining anti-Semitism and the attack's circumstances. U.S. military operations in the Caribbean, including the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife in January, have cost nearly $3 billion, according to Bloomberg. Maduro and Celia Flores face U.S. federal charges, which they deny. The U.S. has maintained naval forces off Venezuela, enforcing a partial blockade, while President Trump said America would oversee a transition to power. Operational costs reportedly peaked above $20 million daily. Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves, and Washington has brokered oil deals with interim authorities. The operation has drawn international criticism, including from Russia. China will remove import tariffs on nearly all goods from 53 African countries starting May 1st, President Xi Jinping announced at an African Union summit in Addis Ababa. The zero-tariff policy expands a previous duty-free regime that covered only least developed nations. Eswatini is excluded due to its ties with Taiwan.
This is the most exciting announcement that Africa could receive at this particular time when we're at the AU. You will be aware that the United States of America removed AGOA, which was something which was a cornerstone of Africa's export to the United States of America. But this is more than a replacement of AGOA.
Britain's Director of Public Prosecution said members of the royal family are not above the law as police investigate former Prince Andrew over alleged misconduct involving Jeffrey Epstein. Thames Valley Police are consulting prosecutors' claims Andrew shared confidential information with Epstein during his tenure as trade envoy from 2001 to 2011. Disclosed emails suggest he may have leaked sensitive financial and diplomatic details and advanced Epstein's business interests. Separate correspondence links associates to meetings in China. Andrew has lost his titles and residence as scrutiny intensifies, while police assess further allegations related to Epstein. The UK and Germany's top military chiefs have urged the public to support increased defense spending to deter potential Russian aggression, saying rearmament is necessary to preserve peace. Writing in The Guardian and Die Welt, they warned Russia's military posture have shifted westward since invading Ukraine in 2022. NATO members agreed in 2025 to raise defense spending targets to 5% of GDP by 2035, reflecting what officials call a new security reality. The appeal follows U.S. calls, including from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, for Europe to take greater responsibility for its defense. Russia denies plans to attack Europe. Nigel Farage celebrated as Keir Starmer abandoned plans to cancel elections.
It's amazing, isn't it? I've never promised once in the run-up to May the 1st last year that we'd cut council tax. How could we? We were inheriting heavy debts absolutely everywhere. Have we made £300 million of savings? Yes. Have we got plans to become more efficient and save more in the years to come? Absolutely. And if you look at the council tax rises in areas that are run by reform, they are lower than for the other parties in other areas. And look, you can't just come in to a broken local government system, wave a magic wand and change things overnight, but I believe we're off to a good start.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
Right now, somewhere in Nigeria, there's a Christian family being persecuted. Those who are not killed are often forced to flee their homes. At Equipping the Persecuted, they're committed to reaching every affected area and help heal the deep physical and emotional wounds that have been inflicted upon them. But they can't help them without your support. So please visit equippingthepersecuted.org and donate today. Sign up for just $35 a month. It's a little over $1 a day, and you'll help rescue Christians who are suffering and provide security, medical care, food, shelter, and love. The situation is urgent, so I'm asking you to join in the next 10 minutes. It's a life of fear and danger for these Christians, but for just over $1 a day, you can change everything. Go online to equippingthepersecuted.org and make a difference in the life of a persecuted Christian. That's www.equippingthepersecuted.org.
Hi, my name's Michelle Tankey and I'm the volunteer manager at the Lost Dogs Home. We've got 145 incredible volunteers that help us with a wide range of activities, including helping out in the laundry, taking dogs for a walk, doing activities with our enrichment program, administration, gardening, you name it, they're helping us around the shelter. Whether it's blowing bubbles to entertain kittens waiting for adoptions or even taking a dog for a walk, it's such an incredible positive impact on the animals. Volunteers are so important and special to this shelter because they support us in caring for thousands of animals each year. The impact they have enables us to do far more for the animals than we would be able to. For example, we can get on top of the huge amount of laundry we have. So the volunteers allow us to clean thousands more blankets than we could. It's incredible the amount of gifts that we're given by the public. We're so grateful for it. So if we get some toys, we can give them directly to puppies straight away to play with. Or towels, we can take them to our vet hospital for them to use immediately. So it's a really important job to help staff with. I would say to someone who's interested in volunteering to please get in touch. We would love to hear from you. We have an application form on our website that you can fill in, so please just detail all your skills and experience you can offer the shelter, and we'll be in touch when a suitable role comes up.
What is Australia's deadliest predator? The one that hits with more than 30 Gs of force, strikes in under a second, leaves catastrophic injury in its wake. You won't hear it, you won't see it, not until it's too late. Australia's deadliest predator isn't found in the wild. It's on our roads. Speeding is the killer.
The earlier cancer is found, the better our chances of treating it.
Lung cancer screening is available for people with a smoking history. To find out if you're eligible for a free scan,
see a doctor or a health professional.
It could save your life.
I want to be the best dad that I can be.
I will be her biggest fan.
I want to be his superhero.
I love being connected to my kids.
She means the world to me.
I'm looking forward to this game, mate. It's going to be so much fun. I love being his dad and his best mate.
She is very special to me.
With the latest information and analysis of major events from around the world, this is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And welcome back to The World Today. Nice to have your company. It's a 8:15 in the UK, 6:15 in Queensland, 100 years behind. No, just joking. New South Wales and Victoria, it's 7:15, and they're home right now, probably having a shardy or something like that. And far too early in the UK, although looking at my chat, I'm sure they would push one back if they could. Now, we're talking today about the ascendancy of technocracy, and if we should rightfully be concerned about decisions being made for us by our tech oligarchs. Think about it. They do control our lives. Dr. Shane Fudge I presume he enjoyed a 20-year career in academia in a variety of teaching, research and educational roles. Shane completed a PhD in social policy in 2006, then undertook a 6-year postdoctoral research post at the University of Surrey, specialising in the governance and policy of low carbon transition. He then took up a 5-year teaching post at the University of Exeter, teaching energy policy, environmental politics, and research methods in environment and sustainability. He left academia in 2017 and now writes for the alternative media in the UK. He is published in the Light Truth newspaper, which is a great newspaper, The Conservative Woman, and The White Rose. First of all, thanks to Shane for joining us. Shane, thank you very much.
Morning.
Do we have to worry about what is happening to us in the very near future?
Yeah, we do. I think the pervasiveness of technology in our society has been an accident waiting to happen, really. We are so enmeshed in technology now, and it's going to be the major control mechanism for these so-called oligarchs into the future, and we're already a lot of the way there. I think what happened in 2020 was a black swan event in many ways, but what it did, it uncovered a lot of the ways in which we are totally hooked into technology. And, social media platforms exploit the brain's reward systems in much the same ways as any other kind of addiction and drug. So it's a very difficult one. What it means is that we've got a population that is really kind of already enmeshed in these kind of systems of control, and it's kind of fed on top of a lot of other kind of things, such as lifestyles, and it also feeds into kind of the lower kind of emotions as well. So it lights up particular areas of the brain which make us a lot easier to control. So it's quite a concern, really. And the fact that, this kind of revolution's being led by the Silicon Valley kind of tech oligarchs is pretty worrying, I think, for us all.
It is, isn't it? I just reading a whole bunch of notes here. We know who the elites are. Then there are levels below these people who are the gatekeepers, where our governments are situated. And they have less power than the elites. Do they have enough power to change the direction that the elites set out for us?
I think, from my kind of research, I think this is a window of opportunity to move in. I think this is, the Great Reset, Fourth Industrial Revolution, whatever you're going to call it, has been in the planning for decades. And I think the difference is now that everything is in place for this to actually happen. So I think this is why they made their move in 2020. And also, from my own research, the Trump administration, I think it's kind of Silicon Valley and the tech oligarchs, the technocracy, that kind of ideology, which has been around since the 1930s, has now found its kind of way, found its kind of platform. On unelected and officials, and that's the way they want it. No politics in this. The plan is to kind of do away with national governments and to kind of run society on a resource based rather than a market based kind of mechanism. And so this is going to be run by experts rather than politicians. You can take your choice as to which is the lesser of the two evils, but this is going to be a system that's not going to be is in no way going to be related to democratic systems of voting. The issues that they're going to deal with have already been decided: the climate crisis, resource dependency, the possibility we're going to run out of resources, and it's all going to be based around that rather than price mechanisms. They've already ring-fenced the issues that they're going to be dealing with, and of course things like climate change. There's lots of challenges around that, whether it's actually taking place or not, as a lot of the other issues. Whether we're going to run out of resources, well, that's a moot point. Do we really know how much oil reserves we've got? So all these issues are kind of already ring fenced for us, and they already decide. These are already the decisions these people are going to make. So there's no challenge. It's almost like climate change. If you question that, if you question the science, it's a moral, virtuous issue rather than a scientific issue. So these are all concerning. These issues have already been ring fenced the way we're going to be living our lives.
Interesting, isn't it? I mean, the people who you think would be a little more intelligent, say, for example, climate change. We know it's a scam, but regardless, it just moves on and on and on and on and just rolls over those with another opinion because the lie is bigger than the truth. I went to Hawaii a couple of years ago, a year ago, and I was waiting to get into the room, and a newspaper in Melbourne called me, and they, first of all said, "Oh, are you the conduit between Russians and Donald Trump?" And I thought that was ridiculous. And anyway, he said, and I started to laugh. He said, "What are you laughing at?" I said, "Well, that's just crazy. Next you were saying that climate change is real." Well, I mean, forget the Russia thing. I mean, they could have blown up the world because I said, I started to question climate change. This guy who called me from Australia, outside of on my mobile phone, cell phone, but he called me and he was so upset he hung up in my ear. Wow. And it's really interesting though, the climate change thing. Hey, can you tell me which countries are at the forefront of this, I suppose, technocratic revolution and another word probably digital gulags? And I believe there's Israel, Ukraine, and India, of all places.
Wow. I mean, from my research, mostly the kind of the tech oligarchs in the Silicon Valley, but a global governance is obviously a world without borders. So these tech elites operate according to their own little network, which is global and it's borderless. So, part of the architecture that they're building is going to be a global gulag, if you like. So, and these people are going to be unaccountable. So experts making decisions. And the thing with technocracy is a history of technocracy that goes back to, as I said, to the 1930s. This was an idea that experts could run the world without the interference from politicians. So politicians are just a nuisance, really, and the real experts have to make these decisions. So technocracy is something that's been around for a long time, and it's a little bit like all the other ideologies that structure governments, like monetarism, and Keynesianism, it's found its way now. It's found its idea, and it's also found a climate because there's a guy called Matthias Desmet who wrote a book called The Psychology of Totalitarianism, and he's kind of drawing on the traditions of people like Hannah Arendt and people like that that were looking at the kind of how the Nazis were able to influence so much over their population, how they were able to get so much buy-in from their populations. And the thing with technocracy is that it has a few major ideas now that have been taking place and have been being embedded over the last few years. And one of the issues that Matthias Desmet makes is that totalitarian comes from the population. So what you've had over the last kind of 30 years or so, I guess, is a growing kind of people want action taken over climate change. So they're calling for action from governments to kind of oversee this. So you can see this is kind of taking place over a long period of time. People, and the same with COVID. So you have to have some kind of buy-in from populations to actually make these kind of transitions. So the way they've done this is to feed in these kind of fear-based kind of issues over the last few years. So global boiling and, adverse weather events, which we're seeing, which may or may not be attributed to climate change. I think they're probably not. But you've had all these different events so people are actually calling for people to make decisions for them. So that's how they've been able to get a lot of buy-in over this over the last few years. And then you can kind of, as you were saying, that discussion, if you say anything against the science on any of these things, you're a denier or you're a conspiracy theorist, all these different convenient labels to kind of discredit anyone that questions the science. And so, we've moved on from science now as being something that people negotiate and discuss to something that's actually a fait accompli. It's actually, there's no room for discussion. These are things that are actually in place and you don't question them or challenge them. Otherwise, you're a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, there's many of those that control the world, almost like the evil one. They seem to be quite mad. I mean, they are quite mad. But who's going to rein them in? Because if you look at governments, they seem to be quite mad too. I saw some hope with one of the news items that at 10 Downing Street, there's a cat there. So maybe there is hope for the UK after all, that the cat will start making decisions much better than what the Prime Minister's making. But who's going to rein these evil people in? Because the governments, they're in bed with them and they're just as mad.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of different, this is a collusion between the tech elite and the governments, but also the kind of real puppet masters behind this, which I call the 13 bloodline families, who from my research, I think actually pull the strings. And all these people really are as the shop window. So people like Bill Gates are the kind of shop window for all this. And the tech elites are the ones that are able to put these things into operation because they have the technology. Whether they're mad or not, I don't know, probably, but they're very rational. They're very kind of left brain. They're very kind of neutral. That there's no kind of feeling. It's like this is the way forward, and this is the rational way forward. So if this is the way we have to move forward, so depopulation and all the other kind of agendas on, then this is the way we have to go. And that's why they don't really believe in politics, because they feel it gets in the way of rational decision making. I mean, this is kind of almost like the culmination of years of kind of left brain education, indoctrination into our educational systems, our universities and schools, where there's no room for kind of emotional or kind of empathy or anything like that. It's kind of rational decision making. This is the way we do this, and this is the way forward. I mean, I think the Trump government is a kind of the MAGA thing. I don't know if you remember the inauguration of the Trump presidency. Elon Musk came and he said, "We're the dark MAGAs. We're the dark enlightenment." The dark enlightenment for me is a kind of almost the kind of a nod and a wink to the people that know what's really going on, because I believe all governments are kind of controlled by corporations and people behind the scenes and that. So, these are almost like things like MAGA are almost kind of like a veneer, let's make America great again. But underneath it, there's a Silicon Valley kind of group that are the ones making the real decisions. I mean, they already did when they came in. Doge was about obtaining mass amounts of data from all sectors of society, which is going to be kind of used in this electronic infrastructure that they're building. And nobody hears about that. All you hear is about Let's America Great Again. There's a couple of things that are done here and there that, but underneath it all, there's a kind of this architecture being built by the real kind of power behind what's happening in the Great Reset.
It is actually very scary if you look at these data centres that have been built around the world. Australia's got a bit of a problem. We're going to build all these big data centres, but we haven't got enough water for them. And we haven't got enough electricity for them. Reliable electricity. And we can't build small nuclear power stations to power them up because we'll sell our uranium to the rest of the world, but we can't build anything here because we might damage the world. So we'll let you and the others damage the world. Bugger. So, but they're moving ahead, and these data centers, in my mind, are very scary because knowledge is king, and
it's the currency.
It is. Do you think, just as we wrap this up, do you think we're going backwards when it comes to human rights, liberties, creative input, individual decision making? I'm going to tell you what. I mean, every morning I wake up. It's always nice to, and you will attest to that. And I'll ask Alexa, what's what the forecast is. It would tell me, and then I'll go into the living room because I like to make sure that it's right. I'll ask Google, and it tells me a bit of a different forecast, different temperatures and stuff. So, what we're doing is we're being led by, if I say it's going to rain, or Alexa says it's going to rain, so I dress up because it's going to rain, and then Google says no, it's not. It's going to be a very warm day without any rain. Then what I've done is I made a decision based on misinformation. Can you see that happening? Forget there was just using that as an example, but we rely so much on computers, even with the AI systems such as Grok and those, and we're starting to rely on these more and more. The information they give us may not necessarily be right, but it's what the people running these devices, that's what they want you to know, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a couple of things to that. We have, from my own research, we have nearly 500 data centers in the UK now. And they're going to be building 100, I believe, in the next year or so. And they need this to run their system. And as you say, it's very energy intensive and very water intensive. And the interesting thing for me, I'm not sure if you're aware, Tony Blair came in yesterday and said that he doesn't agree with net zero, which is a really interesting. I don't like Tony Blair. I don't like David Miliband either, actually.
But he did believe it until he bought into a data center.
But I'm wondering whether Blair realizes that net zero, which is going to reduce our energy production and consumption by a huge amount, and probably 50%, I would imagine, to removing away from conventional energy systems. Maybe he realizes they're not going to be able to run their data centers.
No, I think you're right.
It occurred to me,
Yeah, they got bikes. They're all sitting, pedaling away, quick. But it's a worry, isn't it? Because and we do have to finish up here, so which is a pity. But the way the world is going is. We had a friend from UAE stay with us one day, and he said the West is upside down, and that's what it is at the moment, isn't it?
By design.
Yep, and it is by design.
Yeah.
How can we stop it? Just a very quick answer here. How do we stop it? I don't think it's possible.
That's a big question. Yeah, it's difficult because people are so enmeshed. People are waking up. People are things like, that Blair calling that out, and they're starting to expose their own hypocrisies. There is some, I know a lot of this is theatre you see on the media and in politics, but they are starting to expose their own contradictions and their own hypocrisies. And the more they do that, the more people wake up. You have this big argument over net zero and that. You have different political parties springing up in the UK, and all the time the veneer is being exposed more and more. That's the only kind of, we're bigger numbers than they are. That's more and more people are waking up all the time. I see it all the time. People are starting to understand and see through the massive inconsistencies in these arguments. And they're also going to see how much it's going to impact them, because for a lot of people, they're only going to wake up when they can't eat or when they can't move to their local neighbourhood and things like that. That will wake a lot more people up as well. I see hope in that, but I'm hoping it's not going to get too far before that happens, and that we can wake up a bit sooner to what's actually going on.
I had a thought, but my parents, who are both gone now, they would have wished for the days that a tablet was something you put in your mouth. Not something that controls your life.
Yeah.
Shane, it's a pleasure, and if you're up to it, we can do this again next week, because I enjoy.
Lovely, yeah, I look forward to
it. Absolutely fantastic. If somebody wants to find out more about what you do, how do they, or read your articles, how do they do that?
You contact the editor at Conservative Woman and the Light paper. They will pass my details on.
They're very good, the Light. Absolutely love them.
Yeah, great. Yeah, brilliant.
Fantastic. Very illuminating too, and a great conversation. Dr. Shane Fudge here on The World Today.
Biodiversity is life. Our forests, grasslands, deserts, waterways, estuaries, coastlines, coral reefs and oceans are all living ecosystems, our planetary life support systems. These living ecosystems are ancient synergistic tapestries woven over billions of years, long before the advent of agriculture, housing, mining, energy systems and infrastructure. Now, the remnants of these ancient ecosystems stand under relentless siege from large-scale renewable energy infrastructure and critical minerals mining. The scale of this is so vast that it will sweep across our beautiful country and will leave a lasting legacy of sterile wastelands and add to the climate catastrophe. So, dear humanity, this is our plea. Let the guardianship of wild places rise above the false messaging of lobby groups that campaign for mining and industrialization of wild places as sustainable and green on behalf of profit-driven renewable energy corporations and investors. Destroying the remnant functioning biosphere, the ecosystems and habitats, is no climate solution. These are habitats that are home to the tremendous diversity of birds, mammals, reptiles, insects, fungi and plants that we call biodiversity, and these are natural climate regulators. Once they're gone forever. The clock is ticking, and it's only seconds before midnight.
But it's still not too late to stop this onslaught destroying Australia's remaining unique wild places and biodiversity that we cherish and love for now and for future generations.
And welcome back to the well, did I push the wrong button? Sorry, Robin. I didn't want to surprise you like that. Interesting that message, by the way, we just played that small commercial or public service announcement. If you haven't been to Australia, and you would have read about it, all these beautiful mountains and up Queensland, the Great Dividing Range. Well, they're going to bulldoze the top off. They're going to put in these windmills. I think 3,500 of them, plus many tens of thousands of other windmills right around Australia. And in doing so, they're going to destroy the natural habitat. Koalas can't live there, and if there's bushfires, you can't put it out, which we have lots of fires. None of that sort of stuff. And yet you have, it's called the NEPA, N-E-P-A, the National Environment Protection Authority, or association, whatever they're called, and it's got to look after Australia's, all of Australia's bushland and environment. Not one thing. It's a guy called Chris Bowen is our environment minister, and he's pushing ahead to have NEPA activated, at the same time pushing ahead to make sure that we put in tens of thousands of windmills and destroy our natural terrain. Pretty much a sign of madness, isn't it? One hand saying this, the other hand destroying it. And of course, the legacy media in Australia has not picked that up. And the people were just going, oh, that sounds good. Oh, yes, that sounds really good. Very much like this. Why is Keir Starmer's government so hell-bent on rejoining the EU? Maybe he has a thing for von der Leyen. Who knows? Despite this being overwhelmingly rejected by the UK citizens, and they did, are there any benefits for the UK? Because it seems the UK will pay a pretty penny to again surrender its independence. Robin Tilbrook is the leader and chairman of the English Democrats and chairman of the Workers of England Union. Robin, thank you for joining us, and now you can come in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you I just want to read you this from Starmer, if you don't mind. And I'd like to get your, and by the way, don't go towards your muskets. Just sit there and enjoy this, what I'm going to read you from Starmer. It's a statement from Keir Starmer. We are not the Britain of Brexit years anymore, says Starmer in Germany. Great place, by the way. We must look outwards and work with our European neighbours to keep our country safe. There is no British security without Europe. And Ursula, I put that part in myself, and no European security without Britain and Ursula. It's a pretty, the Ursula bit I put in myself because I'm being frivolous, but what's wrong with this statement? I mean, I could tell you now what's wrong with it. Does he ever wonder why he's on the nose with the UK? Because surely most people in the UK would have to be going, nah, this guy has lost the plot. He's doing what he wants.
I think he's probably got to the point where most people in the UK don't actually listen very much to what he has to say.
That's a problem, though, because he's still going to bring in things that, if they don't listen to what he says, how will they know what he's going to bring in?
Well, it's just a fact that quite a lot of people do not follow politics, are not interested in politics, and something very sort of abstract, like what you're talking about there, although very important, a lot of people simply don't follow it. And I think it's, in just in terms of recent history, it is worth just bearing in mind that although Labour, notionally at any rate, has got a a great majority in the House of Commons and is in the process of creating a majority in the House of Lords, and therefore would have full control over the central constitutional legislative structures. Nevertheless, it actually got the votes of only about 20% of the electorate. So we have an electoral system which rewards the fact that quite a lot of people simply don't take any part in elections and have no interest in politics. And when you're talking about something as serious as they just don't follow it. So that's why he's able to, partly why he's able to get away with saying and doing things that most people simply don't support.
Because it's the same thing in Australia. It's people say, "Oh, how did that happen?" It's been going on for like 2 years. Well, it happened because you didn't take any notice of it. But Starmer doesn't have a mandate to do what he would like to do, and that's probably just to bugger up the UK. But he's doing it. How can he get away with it?
Well, like I say, the fact is he hasn't got a mandate, you might say, from a sort of popular democratic point of view, rather than the liberal democracy where you have systems in place that prevent the majority from actually getting what they want. But from a popular democratic point of view, where you're looking at what the majority want, then he hasn't got a mandate at all anyway. Quite a lot of what he's been doing since he became prime minister has been actually directly contrary to what they said they were going to do in the election. They've got a majority in the House of Commons. They're getting a majority in the House of Lords. They feel that they can do what they want. They are most of the leadership of the Labour Party are Fabians. Their logo originally for Fabians was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Mm-hmm. They came in as a sheep, and we're now seeing the wolf.
Who are the people behind this push?
Well, I think it's the whole EU project has always been anti-nation state. The idea of the EU, or before that, the European Common Market. It's never been about reinforcing nation state. It's never really been about democracy. It's been a project to internationalize Europe, and that is part of a general project to try and create a world government, I think.
I think you're about right. Can you see any real benefits for the EU integration?
There's no benefits to a British nation state or England in integration within the EU. In fact, on the contrary, it's a threat, and it's a threat to not only to our national interests but also to our democracy and our individual rights.
Yeah, the UK growth it's increased tremendously since leaving. Media and government doesn't promote that. Let me read these things. 14% increase in GDP since the UK finally left the EU on 31st December 2020. And since Brexit, UK business investment in real terms has grown by nearly 20%. This would most likely undo all that good.
Yes, it almost certainly would, Mike, but there is an additional factor here, and that is that much of what Labour's been up to since it got into power has been undermining growth, and in that sense they're rather carrying on what some of the Conservative people were doing beforehand. So we're now at a point where we've got taxes at a level that's higher than any time since we were involved in the Second World War. And we've got all sorts of regulations coming in and already been imposed which undermine business.
It's pretty scary, isn't it? Because I mean, if he wants to go down this path, can you just let me know? I mean, such as defence, climate, all things EU. It's going to cost a fortune. You haven't got any money.
That's absolutely right, Mike. The state, the British state is fairly close to being bankrupt, but I think they haven't played all their last cards yet, which would leave all the rest of us bankrupt as well. So they are feeling that they're in power. They can decide what's going to happen. They can make the rules. And at the moment, we are still a country where people generally obey whatever they're told to do. I mean, if you take our tax system is based upon people giving their information to the state and then working out how much they ought to pay. This is what all businesses and self-employed people have to do. And having worked out how much they've got to pay, then they pay it. Now, most countries in the world, that simply wouldn't work. People wouldn't pay. They wouldn't declare what they'd earned, and they wouldn't pay whatever the state said. We've worked. Our system has worked on compliance from the population for a long while, and I suppose a real danger to the state is actually that people stop complying.
It's I'm just thinking your independence, because that's going to go. You become less independent. The legal and human rights agenda, that'll change. What do you think? I can't get my head around why he would do this, because he's going to create all these sorts of headaches. What does Nigel Farage do if he gets into power? He can't do much, can he? Because if it's already done, for him to undo it, it's going to cost a fortune.
Yes, I think you're right, Mike. And certainly one of the things that the Labour leadership have been talking about is trying to reform-proof the system. So in other words, they make it impossible for a subsequent government to change things. That would only work if the government coming in hadn't really worked out exactly what they were going to do to reverse things. It would be possible, though difficult, and there's a fairly narrow window of opportunity at the beginning of the new period of government to make major changes. You mentioned about human rights, just changing the subject very slightly. You mentioned about human rights. It is worth bearing in mind that when we're talking about human rights, certainly in the context of what's happened here in Britain, is that the Blair government comes in and it then talks up the idea of human rights. We have the Human Rights Act. But these are human rights that are the opposite of the traditional English common law rights. Traditional English common law rights are our rights as individuals. The human rights that they're talking about and that are centred around the European Convention on Human Rights, those rights are the rights of the state to tell us what we can and cannot do, and to give us limited freedoms which can be taken away in all sorts of circumstances. So it sounds grand, human rights, but actually the agenda is very often against individual liberty.
Nigel Farage has said that when he gets in 3.5 years' time or thereabouts, that he will exit 600,000 illegal immigrants. Donald Trump has said the same thing by using ICE, which has made a few headlines here and there. In the US, they have around about 40 million illegal immigrants, and so far they've exited 200,000 of those. So they still have just about the entire amount there, because 40 million's a lot. If Nigel Farage wants to do the same thing in the UK and get rid of 600,000. That's 3 times more than what Donald Trump has done, and he has a bigger task force to do that. He's just about given up because it's just too hard. Do you think Nigel is sort of he needs a reality tablet quickly to say, look, you're not going to get rid of 600,000. Can you imagine 600,000 that need to be exited, and they may very well need to be exited, but all the protests you'll have, the chaos in the streets. Do you think Nigel should probably revisit that decision and say, well, there's not much we can do about it, or we will destroy the rest of the country trying to do something about it?
Nigel Farage has made various contradictory remarks about this. Sometimes, to some audiences, he does talk up a game of definitely doing something about illegal immigrants. But in other audiences, he's much more equivocal about it and much less concerned about getting rid of illegal immigrants. I don't know how serious he would be if he actually got into office. We don't know whether he's going to achieve that. I mean, at the moment, what's happening here is we're getting further sort of disintegration, really, rather than integration on the right of politics. And we've just had the launch of a new party, Restore Britain, under Rupert Lowe, and there's all sorts of excitement about that. But whether that's going to impact on reform's chances, we don't know, and we won't be able to say, I don't think, until much closer to whenever the general election will be. And I think it's worth saying the general election at the moment, the rule is that general elections have to be every 5 years. But bear in mind the control that Starmer and his people have got over the constitutional legislative arrangements, that there's nothing that could legally stop them from reverting to the 7-year rule, which we used to have a couple of 100 years ago. So they might well not have the general election in 2029. We will have to wait and see. They have, however, just suffered quite a serious setback to their anti-democratic agenda. They've been cancelling local elections.
They've done an about turn.
Well, they've done an about turn because they were about to lose a case in the High Court, and they didn't think they'd got any chance of succeeding in that case. And quite honestly, I don't think they did have any chance. My legal hat on, as it were. I think they were going to lose. However, if they had fought it out and then appealed, they would have managed to block these elections, because the time to do the elections would have gone. It's Hamlet in Shakespeare talks about the law's delay. The law does work to delay things, and they could have delayed a final legal decision until after it was too late to have the elections, at which point they would have achieved what Starmer was trying to achieve, which was to avoid allowing reform to build momentum, and also to keep a lid on the voters' rebellion against Labour.
So if everything goes, not swimmingly well, because if it was, he'd be drowning. But if it sort of goes his way and you become much closer to the EU, just say, for example, Nigel gets in. And by the way, Alan Cook was saying that he gave me the 600,000 figure. So obviously Nigel's messaging needs to be tightened up a fair bit. But regardless of that, Nigel's in power. He's the new Prime Minister. What do you think the European Court will do on their desire to deport asylum seekers? Probably to stop it.
Well, you're right. The European there's two European courts, confusingly, but there's a European court that deals with EU matters, which currently we're not subject to for almost anything. But there are a few items still under the current arrangements where that could kick in. But the European court that we're normally talking about here is the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, and that is a court where it doesn't actually have real powers. It's again a compliance thing where various states are told that they're what they're doing is not in compliance with the convention. And they then decide to do what they're told by the European Convention judges, and that's the essence of what's been going on with the European Court of Human Rights. That the states have decided to comply. If a state decided not to comply, there would probably be a publicity row about it, but there wouldn't actually be anything very much that people could do about it. So it isn't a situation where the Labour and the Conservative actually had to do what they were told. It was that they, in effect, decided that that's what they were going to do. And there are also ways in which you can limit the effect of the European Convention of Human Rights. They're called derogations. If a state decides to derogate from particular parts of the convention, then it can ignore that bit.
Who would want to be a politician? Actually, and I see your country, it's in a. I mean, if Starmer does stay there till for another 3.5 years, I think whoever gets in after that has got a massive headache. If somebody wants to
be worse than that, Mike, because Starmer's almost certainly going to be out.
I'm being polite. But you have your muskets and probably a good whiskey hidden, so you'll be fine. Maybe not. You might be. Join the army. You got weapons, something like that. Robert, if somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
Yes, I'm on Twitter at Robin Tilbrook. I'm also the English Democrats is englishdemocrats.party, and the Workers of England Union is workersofengland.co.uk.
Robin Tilbrook, always a pleasure. I was very polite about your muskets this time. Normally I'd have a little more of a dig, only because I'm jealous. So I'm not all that well today, so I'm behaving myself. But next time, let the games begin. Robin Tilbrook, thank you so much. This is The World Today. We'll catch you again tomorrow with the World Today and the Protagonists. Have a great one. By the way, it's almost 3 after 9 in the UK, 3 after 7 in Queensland, and 3 after 8 in New South Wales and Victoria. Thank you so much for your time.